This is the JL Billet Reaper. This is a PDW chassis for the Ruger RXM. For those of you with a short attention span, the short version of this is that it's very similar to a Flux Raider, the P365 model, except it takes Ruger parts, and thus Glock magazines and the whole Glock Gen 3 ecosystem instead of SIG parts. Main differences being that the brace is not spring-loaded, you have to manually deploy it, and also there is no like sort of simultaneous mag deploy button like on the Flux. You have one mag release for the front mag, and you have a different one that you have to press for the actual normal magazine. This is a $479 chassis, and I have about $1,560, not about, I have exactly that much into this build, so it's expensive. I've got 1,350 rounds right now through this thing, and I've found some problems. So this video is meant to be informative, not so much entertaining. I want to just kind of show you information and my experience with this thing. I've had it for probably 3 months now, I think. Yeah, 2.5. So got it through about a dozen different range trips, and there's just not a whole ton of solid information on this thing online. There's a couple of reviews for it. They've had access to it before, or those reviews that I did watch, like they had access to this thing before. I think the first batch even went out, that like could be purchased by us normies. So I'm not really sure what's up there. And nobody seems to have encountered any issues whatsoever with it, which I have quite a few nitpicks and troubles, and I think anybody who's shot these a lot would encounter the same things. So I wanted to kind of bring that to light a little bit. I still think it's a fantastic product, but if you're going to spend your money on this, you should know what you're getting. So a few caveats before I really get into things. 1,350 rounds. It's probably more than any other review that I've seen on YouTube, but it's still not that much. I've had it since May, and I don't think the round count really bears all that much weight when it comes to this conversation, because this is still a Ruger RXM at the end of the day. Adding this chassis platform, there's not that much you can do to really screw up the reliability. The main point of comparison that I'm going to be using for this entire video is going to be the SIG, or the Flux P365, which is for the SIG, as well as Flux has announced, well, not announced per se, but they've hinted and mentioned that they're working on a chassis, PDW chassis for the Ruger RXM. That does not exist right now. So I'm comparing this against a product that does not exist. And also, we don't actually know what form that's going to take right now. So that could actually be like more in the shape of the Flux P320 or PSA's AXR, whatever thing that they're coming out with, or may or may not ever actually release. So we don't actually know what that's going to look like, and there's not anything to directly compare this to right now. Closest thing would be, again, the P365. I also want to just mention briefly, I have no affiliation with any company involved here. The only bias that I have is that I paid almost $500 for this thing, and it's stupid. Like, everything involved is pretty expensive. So I want this to not be a piece of crap. That does make me a little bit biased, but I'm not being paid by anybody. All 1,350 rounds were shot using Federal Syntech 124 grain, all at an indoor range, so not like running around, barricade shooting, none of that. It's just been really boring, sort of just build drills and that kind of thing at an indoor range, nothing crazy. I'm also not going to be talking about POU or why you might want to buy sort of a system like this. There's plenty of other people that can explain that much better than I can. If you're in the market for something like this and you're getting ready to spend that kind of cash on a platform like this, you probably already have your mind made up on why you want it or why you might not want it. Mm-hmm. So starting out, the entire the main actual frame here, this is just one solid piece of 7075 aluminum. I don't know what the brace is made out of, but everything here is just one giant chunk of metal. Assembly of the thing is really pretty straightforward when you get it in the box. If you've put together or changed out your grip module on a different Ruger or on RXM before, it's the exact same process. The only difference is that they don't actually give you the spring for the takedown lever here, I forget the name. Same goes for the magazine release and the magazine spring. You will have to provide your own, or more likely transfer it from your old grip module. I only mention that, and it's not a problem at all, but I still mention it because when you order a new grip module, like from Magpul, they send you the new spring, or the mag release and the spring come with it, as well as the new spring for the takedown lever. So field stripping this thing is not as simple as that, because you have this shroud here. Assuming you have an optic mounted, you can't just, well, it's going to be too awkward to do with the camera setup right now, but obviously that can't work. So in order to strip it, you do need to first remove the light, and then there's 2 screws, and you can remove the shroud. That's really pretty easy, but, well, I hate the Streamlight screw on here. The only reason I keep a nickel anywhere. A couple of quick complaints about the whole shroud setup. First of all, as mentioned, every time you want to just remove the slide, you have to take off your light. And then you need a, what the heck is this, a 3/32 inch Allen key. That's a really pretty tiny hole, or pretty tiny, whatever, you know. So use a quality Allen wrench. Don't just use some shitty Chinese one that you got with your printer or something 10 years ago, or your furniture. You don't want to strip these out because these are kind of strange screws, like the head on them is rather tall. But 2 of those, then the shroud comes off. You can shoot this without the shroud, no problem. I definitely would not recommend that if you don't have a light. Right now I have a 4.5 inch slide on here. It shoots just fine with a 4 inch slide, but especially with the 4 inch slide, your thumb definitely creeps up way too close to the barrel there, especially if you don't have an extended barrel. The first 350 rounds that I have through this thing were on this barrel, actually, and the vast majority of the round counts were with this slide and this light rather than the 4.5 inch and this larger sight. So while you can shoot it without the shroud, wouldn't recommend it unless you want to blow off your thumb. It's not as sketchy with the light on there because that moves your hand further down, but still wouldn't really recommend it. Don't have flash in front of the barrel. Pretty simple. So with that out of the way, I'm going to collapse the brace so I don't smack my camera. Oh boy. Idiot. I feel like a politician. There we go. Camera shy. So right now I have a Glock 34 Gen 5 barrel in here. This is from Ballistic Advantage. I think I paid like 120 bucks or something for it. I'm not going to remove it because I have to pull off the muzzle device. Yeah, no real complaints about that. It's longer barrel, which I'll go into reasons later on why that is pretty much a mandatory thing on this. It does not matter, again, if you have the 4 inch barrel and slide. There's no difference here. Make sure that if you're getting a barrel that you get a Gen 5 Glock 34 barrel. Do not get a Gen 3, even though the rest of the parts are Gen 3, because that's not how Glock 34 barrels were. Those use the 17 style locking block. Cool. So the pistol grip on here, this is sized for a 15 round magazine. Obviously you can use it just fine with 17 or 33 round stick or a drum, whatever the hell you want. That doesn't really matter. I think it's a good thing that the grip is 15 size instead of 17 size, because that makes the overall size of the thing much smaller when you have it like in a bag. Notice that the 15 rounder actually sticks out further than the 17 rounder does when it's in this configuration. So that's why I normally run 15 up front, 17 in the back. Then when you're doing a cool guy reload, now this one's flush fitting. So the brace arm, this is just a big old chunk of aluminum as well. It's got a notch at the bottom, which can kind of be activated with your index finger in order to open it. Not very reliably, and it's not going to push it all the way forward. It doesn't free swing enough where you can just every time actually pull that off and make it open nicely. The front mag, it's held down with the mag release itself. It's held in with a really tiny screw. I have no idea what size head that is on there, but this did wobble out on about 500 rounds. It got really loose, and then simple fix, just use some Loctite, whatever. But would have been, yeah, keep that in mind. So let's see. I think in their advertising they do say that the brace arm is like rock solid. There's no wobble to it whatsoever. I don't know if I can show it on. Oh yeah. There's definitely a bit of give right there. It's not really a big deal because when it's up against your shoulder, because the angle of it comes down, like you're instantly going to take up any of that slack, and none of it's going to actually be, like it's not wobbling in your hands here as soon as you have it shouldered. It kind of looks like with the construction of this that you would be able to just crank down on this screw and then be able to tighten up the whole mechanism, but I would definitely not recommend that because even though it's a 7075, not like 6061, this is a steel screw and it's still going into aluminum, and that's a lot of material to kind of deform in order to squeeze this in more. So I wouldn't take the chance personally. If this gets really bad and is just becoming obnoxious or something, maybe a little bit of shim stock in there or something just to tighten up the tolerances a little bit. I think that'll happen with wear and with usage. There's not really anything you can do other than maybe add like a spring or something just to always have it pushed down, but it's not wobbling around too bad on its own in a way that's noticeable, especially if it's holstered or in a bag. It has a crossbolt safety. It is not marked in any way, which is safe and which is fire. I don't think that really matters, but again, just mentioning it. One thing I did want to mention as well, though, is that your trigger finger can actually unsafety this thing like in the same sort of motion and direction that you would go for a trigger pull. So it's not impossible that your finger actually bumps the safety and as you go to pull the trigger. Most other firearms that I own and have a safety, the safety you have to like move in a different direction than like the trigger pull direction. That's not the case here, but there's other handguns out there that have the same sort of crossbolt safety right here, and then let us have the exact same problem. So again, not an issue, but do not use the safety as like the only thing preventing you from negligently discharging the thing or whatever. It does also have a sling QD. I don't really know what for. I don't own a sling that would, like a single point sling with a QD on it. I've got one with like a parrot clip or whatever, but you can't really find, there's like a couple of them that I found, and they're like $100, and I didn't really feel like buying it because I'm really just not entirely sure what the point of slinging this would be. So going into a little bit more details about the barrel, if you got a non-threaded variant of like a Glock 34 barrel, it would come out really pretty flush with the end of the shroud. Go ahead and reassemble this. But so as I briefly mentioned, the first 300 rounds that I put through this thing, I was using this barrel, so just a little 4-inch. And being honest, the thing was miserable to shoot with that. It bruised the shit out of my shoulder, and I thought like I was going to break my collarbone or something. It was really pretty rough. With this barrel, this thing comes in at like 5.81 inches, I think. You can Google it. Hell of a lot better shooting experience. You're still going to get bruised. It's still not going to be all that fun, but way better than before. And like, you're not going to injure yourself while you're doing drills or something. The holster is sold separately, at least as of now. It's got an open bottom on it, so you can put these extended barrels or a light or whatever, and it'll pass through the holster just fine. So don't worry about that if you want to put in an even longer barrel for whatever reason. Another kind of sort of just PSA or thing to mention, I guess, would be that when you're shooting this thing, you got explosions going off really damn close to your face. So I think it's a lot better to have, like, get that away from you as much as possible. So I would not recommend that you put like a brake on this thing, or a radian, or any of that stuff. Like, that's just generally not probably a very enjoyable experience. It's already a little bit rough as it is. That's kind of the reason as well that I was mostly shooting Federal Syntac, is because you're going to be tasting whatever ammo and primers that you're using. Like, it's very violent and very close to your face, so maybe choose your ammo wisely. So as far as size goes, this thing makes, honestly, a pretty good bag gun. So again, here's the 17 rounder in there, 15 up front, and it fits inside of one of these. This is a Savior equipment pistol pouch. Really great economy. See a lot of people using these, especially at like shooting competitions and all of that. They're great little pouches. They're super cheap, and it fits this just fine. It barely fits it. It does not fit it using the holster and a magazine in the front. That just sticks out slightly too far. It doesn't matter if you're using Glock mags or these Magpul PMags, same thing. It also fits into larger, like, pistol locking boxes as well, so that could be a huge selling point over, like, a rifle or something, which obviously you need a completely different storage mechanism versus something that you can put in a little bedside safe. It really does not matter which RXM you buy if you're looking to put one of these together. You can get one that's a little 4-inch like this. This is a different grip module that I put on here. But the 4-inch or the 4.5-inch really doesn't matter. You should be, in my opinion, buying a new barrel for it anyway. So barrel length doesn't matter. You get slightly more reciprocating mass on the 4.5-inch and technically a longer sight radius. That doesn't matter because you're using a dot on here, and the irons are pretty much impossible to use. But yeah. So buy whatever RXM you can, whatever one's cheaper, just go with that. That's kind of the message there. When it comes to carrying this, technically, like, well, here's the holster. I've got a lot of problems with the holster. I'll get into that in a minute. Many more problems with this than I did with this. But so as mentioned, light pokes right through. Not a problem. Same thing goes to the barrel, so you can have whatever barrel length you want. Does not matter. Obviously, there's a cutout here for this. Your front magazine trigger is completely, well, okay, you can kind of fish something in there if you want to, so it doesn't lock it off as much as like a, yeah, what you might expect from a normal CCW sort of inside waistband holster. But I'd still say that's reasonably secured. Plus, add the fact that it's got the manual safety on there. When you're actually wearing this thing, I don't really recommend anybody use this for inside waistband. Here's what it looks like appendix carry. The biggest problem is with this front magazine. The angle of it, this isn't like on the SIG model. JL Bill also has a SIG Reaper. And the magazine comes much further back at an angle. Same thing happens with the Flux P365. The magazine's shooting back at an angle, whereas this one is much more vertical. Don't tell the ATF. So the problem there, ouch, I just pinched the shit out of myself, is that the magazine butts into your belt. And it makes it really hard to actually get the thing fully seated. Now that it is fully seated, that does twist it nicely, but now you've got this huge bump out here, and this is a Blue Alpha belt, so it's a decent carry belt and very stiff. Concealability, I'm wearing a lightweight hoodie, and it's, from looking straight on, hands in my pockets, you're not going to see anything. If I lean a little bit back though, yeah, it prints like crazy, and if I were just wearing a t-shirt, then no, not happening. I'm a fairly skinny guy, so maybe if you're bigger and have a little bit more padding, then you can make it work, but not for me. So So in my opinion, this makes a much better sort of bag gun. So optics, red dots are basically a requirement if you ask me. I don't mean that in like a snobby way, but rather that the irons on this are almost entirely unusable. It's not a fault of this platform or of this chassis in particular. It's just sort of it goes with the platform here. So you cannot focus on this front sight when you've got this thing shouldered. If you focus on that front sight, you can't see something 3 feet away from you. It's just gonna be all blurry. Similarly, the rear sight looks more like a field goal, like a goal post. So lining that up with the front is going to be very, very challenging, and really in every scenario except an emergency, I would not depend on the iron sights on this. You'd be better just like point shooting the thing. What kind of dot you go with, I don't think that really matters much either. I have this larger O-Sight C on here right now. This is like kind of the size equivalent to like a 507 comp, whereas this would be similar to an EPS carry. This is an enclosed, this is an O-Sight SE. I am one of the few people in the world that O-Sight has not sent these out to for free or bought or whatever. I paid for these. I actually kind of like them. Use whatever the hell you want. If you want to put an EPS carry on it, go for it. If you want to put a Trijicon, fine. I don't really care. I don't think it really makes much of a difference because, again, you're so damn close to it. I think your non-dominant eye ends up doing more of the work. It's similar to like the old school trick of putting tape over your red dot to make sure that you're shooting with 2 eyes open. The way that this thing moves around, you're really not looking through it very much. That also plays into the shroud. The shroud occludes like a decent amount of your view. Same thing with the front iron and everything. So you're already kind of blocking off a good amount of space. You're not going to be able to see. I don't have a good camera setup that can show this, but a good portion of the view is blocked off and occluded by things like the shroud. So you're going to end up doing more work with your non-dominant eye anyways. So size-wise, most of the rounds that I have on this thing are done with the smaller SE set, and I prefer this more than the larger comp sight. Purely just because this thing has a lot less like sort of parallax or distortion around the edges when it comes to if you don't have the dot perfectly centered, and also just a little bit smaller. And the larger size doesn't really help you here because you have 4 points of contact. It is super easy to re-index at the exact same point every time that you raise this thing. These O-sights also have a really low deck height, and again, that doesn't really matter. I wouldn't prioritize that over a different optic. Like I've got a 407, I think it's an A or whatever, and that's got a much higher deck height, and that honestly might be preferential because then you might clear more of the front shroud. But do what you want. As far as lights go, I don't own that many handgun lights, so I can't test everything. I think they've finally added some documentation to their website on what lights are supported, or at least a few of them. This is a TLR7 HLX, and it fits and it protrudes past a little bit. A TLR7X would be a bit more flush fitting. It would still stick out a little bit though. I would just swing for, especially if you're running with a larger barrel like this, then just get the HLX. HLX puts out a much better light than just the 7X does. A big problem that you're going to run into though is going to be these switches for actually activating the light, and this seems like it's a problem on the fluxes as well. So I could not really figure out if you run the low switch that comes with these lights, you have to move the thing quite a bit further forward to actually be able to activate it. Reason being, the trigger guard is what lights are meant to, or what the switches are meant to wrap around. But as you can probably guess, the front magazine holder is a lot wider than the trigger guard is, so you're not going to be able to do that. So you can either mount it further forward or make some custom switches, and that's what I ended up doing. Took a lot of iterations and sort of tests. I've got these 3D printed models. I'll link them in the description of the video. There's 2 different versions. This one is just sort of cut out around the edges so that you can move the light as far back as possible, and it's kind of shaped so that you can catch it fairly easily with your hand, even if it's gloved. You can either hit it with your thumb here or index finger wrapping around the other side. And then this model actually wraps all the way down onto the bottom, which allows you just to push upward, and that's the much easier one to activate. Both of them work just fine in the holster, no problems whatsoever. Again, you can use the original switches. You're just going to have to move the light further forward. A better fix for this would be to find a light that has like an actual, just a bottom facing button, but I don't really know of many of those that come from a manufacturer that I actually trust and recognize and everything. They do exist. I believe Streamlight used to actually make some with like the first models of the TLR7, but those have since been discontinued. Okay, controls. So you might have noticed that I have an extended magazine release and an extended slide release. Normally I don't really like doing that with Glocks. I don't like swapping out all of the parts because then you kind of lose some of that infamous Glock reliability. But a big issue on these chassis systems, and that's I say these chassis systems and not this product in particular because it's not unique to this one. I'm sure the exact same thing happens with a Flux or whatever, but when you shoot a pistol, your hands are aligned like this. I can easily hit the magazine release from here or the slide release, not a problem. When you shoulder it while keeping your hand in the exact same position, look at where my elbow is. It is pointed almost straight down and is tucked right against my body. So this is not very comfortable, not very easy to maneuver. And even if you're not thinking about it, you're going to find that your arm sort of rotates out. In order to do that, your hand rotates inward. So you go from here to here, and this becomes a much more natural shooting position and also how you would hold an AR or any other sort of rifle, really. The problem with that is now your thumb, it ain't reaching either of these. And I've got really pretty big hands. So if I had that problem, somebody with shorter hands is almost certainly going to have that problem. Really where that comes into play is if you're trying to do a mag change without breaking your grip or unshouldering the PDW. Obviously you can take it away from your shoulder, rotate it inward like you would for chinching magazine on a pistol. You kind of hold it in this orientation and not a problem. But if you're trying to do the speed reload from this position where you change mags without actually removing it from your shoulder, you can't do that unless you put some extended hardware on here. Both of these are from Ghost Inc. and I paid like $30 for both. Again, they fit the holster just fine. Really pretty simple fixes. There's not a whole lot to it. Yeah, that's about it. One thing that has caused me a lot of problems, though, and probably my biggest complaint about this, other than the pin, which we'll get to shortly, is the magwell. So this is a 15-round grip, and I've seen some people complain about that, wishing that it was the full 17 size. I think the 15 is better because that means, as I said, you can keep the 15 up here, and then it fits into a bag. But where this does cause problems is your hand. The meat of your hand ends up hitting and contacting the magazine. It doesn't matter if you're using the 15 or the 17 here. Your hand will end up hitting this, and that means you hit the magazine release and the mag doesn't drop. That one happened a little bit. Right now I've got the spring pressure on it because these are empty mags, but that's kind of a problem. It'll happen at the range, and it'll definitely happen when you're just doing drills at home or whatever, where unless you, again, remove your hand from the bottom or purposely open it up and break your grip entirely, the magazine is just not going to drop. this is not a problem, and the reason I'm bringing this up and being dramatic about it is because if I grab a grip module from an RXM, this is the Glock 19 size, same exact thing. The magwell flares out enough. This is not comfortable. To where that is not a problem. It drops freely. This is the same size, but this flares out just enough where you just don't run into that issue. So that's really kind of a pain in the butt. The other thing is that you can't, like, there's no real features on here that you could index off of when it comes to like printing and building your own sort of flared magwell, just to kind of help alleviate that. I don't really know of a good fix for this, other than maybe they add a hole in the back or whatever for you to actually add your own magwell, because if they were to flare this out a little bit, that would mean that the entire stock that they mill it out from would have to be thicker, and that's going to drive up the cost a lot and machining time. So the big issue that I had is the pin walkout. So this locking block pin at about the 500 round mark, it didn't just walk out, it just fell out. Okay, so I got home from a range trip and it was just sticking halfway out, flicked it with my finger and it shot out the other side. That's a problem. It's not a problem on the polymer frames because, well, this is a polymer frame. They can make it so that this pin actually has to like flex through the polymer a little bit, and then the plastic sort of springs back and holds it in. So we're talking about this pin. Sorry, the camera angles are not ideal for showing this. This can happen on like an OEM Glock, and that's why kits like from Strike Industries exist, where you get these sort of like anti-walk pins, and they've got a little notch in them that the slide release spring is supposed to kind of fall into that notch, and then that'll prevent it from walking side to side and falling out of the gun. I've actually got one here. Yeah, this one. Yeah, so there's little notches in there that'll prevent it from falling out. That does not work on a Ruger RXM for two reasons. One, the pin geometry is different. It's not shaped in the same way as a Glock is. And two, the spring for the slide release doesn't actually contact the pin at all. It runs into the locking block. It looks like it's close, but it's not contacting it, so that won't fix anything. So instead what I ended up doing was using a 2.5 millimeter roll pin. This is a 2.5 by 30 mil, if I remember. 2.5 mil is slightly too small. 3 mil looked like it would be perfect, but I could not get that to go in without probably damaging something. What would kind of fall right in between that would be a 7/64, and as far as I can tell, I can't find a 7/64 pin, like on McMaster Car or anywhere. So I don't know, maybe there's I'm not a machinist, maybe there's a better mechanism for holding that, but since the 500 round mark, so the 850 rounds since then, I've had no issues. This pin hasn't busted or walked out or moved or any of that, nor should it, but I know the PSA daggers, they also use roll pins for these cases, so it should be fine, but I think if that's a problem that you're going to run into at just 500 rounds, I would like to see JL Billet actually just ship that with the chassis if it's something that you're going to need to be replacing. 2.5 mil is also slightly too small, so I actually ended up taking the pin and just kind of crimping it down a little bit on the ends in my vise. And that flared it out just enough where it locks in here good, it's not moving, and everything's worked out just fine. While I'm complaining about stuff, the holster is not made by JL Billet, it's made by a company called Tactical. They also made a holster for their P365 version of the Reaper. First of all, this became available like 2 months after the Reaper itself. I was an early adopter, whatever, it's fine, you won't have that issue. But it was sold exclusively through JL Billet, so I kind of just had to wait for that to happen. This was a separate purchase. After tax and shipping and everything, I paid $88 to actually get this to my door. And I think that's a lot of money considering what this actually is. So, in the bag, I still have it. I'll recreate the unboxing experience for you. That's it. You just get the holster. No hardware, no extra screws, nothing. And I complain about that because they advertise that it is compatible with the Safariland 3-screw system, like for this QLS adapter. And it is, but you need some screws to be able to do that. Also, the hardware that you get with like a QLS adapter, the screws will work, but you don't have any bolts that'll actually work, or nuts rather, on the holster end to actually attach the two. So I would like to see that maybe a little bit, just add some hardware, make it a little bit easier. The big problem here, you can see that I've got 2 different screws in here because I broke this one. Basically, the retention on this was not very good. It still isn't. If you're running around with this thing on your hip, this is like a 2-pound chassis plus the... Well, I should probably do that. See how much it weighs first. 39.9 ounces for this whole thing without any ammo or mags. That's a lot of weight for a little holster like this, especially if you put the adapter on and then shove that on your hip and you're running around or something. I would absolutely not trust this to be retained. Yeah, case in point. So I tried screwing this in, tightening this more, because that's how literally every holster on the market, you have the little squishy bits and you tighten the screws and it tightens compresses the thing, increases your retention or the tension on the handgun. That did not do anything. I could not tighten the thing because it would just spin on the other end. So I thought, okay, there's nothing on here like for you to actually attach a wrench to. It might look like that's just a smooth hole, so you can't put an Allen key in there or whatever to turn that or to hold it and prevent it from turning. So as all smart people do, I just threw it in the vise on this side, clamped down on it. That way I can actually get a screwdriver in there, and then I end up snapping it. It snapped because this is not, well, no, that's just free spinning. Okay, let me get this out here. So, the issue in short is they used this is called a Chicago screw, where you've got the post coming through on one end, and then just a screw on the other. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. So this is the post. And if you notice something, it goes the entire length of this gap, which means there is no room to actually compress this any further because you've just got the head of the screw running right into the damn thing. So I twisted it and then snapped the screw. It's like a number 8 screw, so it's not that hard to break. Trying to tighten this thing up. I don't know why the hell they used posts that are this long. That doesn't really make any sense to me. It does not need to be that long. It's not that long on any other holster that I own, and I own probably a dozen other holsters. So I don't really know what the deal was there. The fix, to be honest, is since you're probably not going to use this clip because it's just too damn big to reasonably carry on your hip or like inside the waistband, use these posts that come on the clip. You can put those here, and then the screw that I'm using, again, it's from a Safariland QLS adapter, fits perfectly fine. use that, and then you can actually compress this like you should be able to, and now have much better retention on the weapon. Yeah. So that's that. Another big gripe with the holster is that, you know, like, they don't post shit for information on this online, whether or not it's compatible with a light even, or what lights. That might have changed since I bought it, but last time I looked at the ad, it was basically blank. Here's a holster. It might work for you, it might not. Who knows? But yeah, doesn't really matter for the light. I think for this itself, they say that you can't use an X300. I don't know why that is. I don't have one. If you're going to mount a QLS on here, you can use the screws from the Safariland kit, but you'll have to find and source and supply your own. These are number 8 screws and washer. So, price breakdown. I really hope my wife does not see this. So the chassis itself, I paid $473 for. This is all these prices are after taxes and shipping and all of that crap. Like, you can look at the prices yourself and figure out what it will exactly be for you, but I'm trying to state this in a way where you can actually know what you're going to expect to pay. So there was some sort of deal running on this. I got, like, I think this was batch number 2 that I got. Right now it's being advertised as $479 on their site. The RXM was, I paid $463 for this thing out the door. You can probably find them cheaper if you really try, but not that much cheaper, for being honest. I paid $126 for the barrel from Ballistic Advantage. You're going to look at probably $175 to $200 at least for a red dot that doesn't completely suck. If you want to go with an EPS or whatever, that's probably the smarter move. I think a lot of these newer Chinese optics are really pretty decent. I've got several thousand rounds through both, done competitions, all of that, and they've held up just fine. $190 for the light, and about $30 worth of other crap just to make this a lot more usable. These aren't required, but I would strongly consider just buying it anyway. $88 for the holster, and that puts the grand total at $1,560. For contrast, a P365 Flux Raider, the chassis itself costs $599, and that, I'm pretty sure it does include the holster already too. So that makes it about $100 more expensive than this. But of course that doesn't count the firearm, magazines, all of that stuff. My local range does sell a Flux P365 for I think it was $1,699, so $1,700, and that comes with a SIG optic, which you probably don't want and are going to end up replacing anyway. So in conclusion, I like this thing. I think it all kind of depends on the current market. So right now, again, the Flux RXM does not actually exist. We don't know if it's going to be small like this or if it's going to be a larger weapon. So if that thing does, if the Flux RXM does come out and it's a full-size PDW like their P320 is right now, I would still recommend this over that. If, on the other hand, the Flux RXM comes out and it is just like their P365, so that means you have a little button to auto-deploy the brace, and then there's a double magazine release to drop both at the same time, and assuming that it is actually available, which Flux has had a lot of problems with seems like everything that they launch, I would maybe consider buying that over this. That said, if Flux did come out with that at the exact same price point as their P365, I'm definitely not selling this thing and getting that instead. I feel no need to upgrade this over that. I'm not going to get into the philosophy of why PDWs and all of that stuff, but I think this makes the perfect bag gun. It fits inside of here. beautifully, and that's what I needed to do. So my final recommendation is, if that's your priority, to have something that you can fit in a bag, fit in your glove box, put on like a pistol locking safe on your nightstand, something that you can throw inside of a bag like this, and then inside of a backpack, and still use the backpack for, you know, backpack stuff, then I think this is fantastic. It's a couple cents for a new roll pin to fix that problem, $30 to fix these problems, and nothing else on it is all that serious. I would probably pass on the holster if you have a different use case or you intend on carrying this somehow. Go for it. It's not all that terrible, but swap the post from here over to here, or hopefully the company actually just fixes that, because I see absolutely no reason for the stupidly long post to be used there, or put a QLS on it and wear it outside the waistband. So yeah, in a version 2, I would hope that they fix the pin, that they fix the actual grip, so that, again, the meat of your palm isn't contacting the magazine as you're trying to release it. And yeah, really all my gripes are fairly cheap things, but also they're kind of big problems at the same time. So with that, I think that ought to cover everything that I had and wanted to sort of disclose here. I've got no affiliation with the company, and I've never communicated with them other than one little email where I asked them when would the holster become available, and they replied to me in like 2 minutes. It was kind of freaky, but it's the only time I've ever talked to them. I have not reported or disclosed issues like the pin walking out. I'm not a beta tester. I'm a paying customer. I bought the thing. I want it to do great and everything, but I'm not obligated to sit here and go back and forth with the company and to try to work out these little issues and stuff. I accept the fact that I am an early adopter, and you're going to run into some of these things. So possibly in the future with more runs, they figure out better ways to do things like this roll pin. I don't think it's a matter of tolerances. Like, you can't really just tighten that up, because then it's a metal housing. You're not going to be able to just magically punch a solid pin through there and have it be retained perfectly. Kind of just a limitation there. So if you have made it this far, which I doubt anybody has, and you found the video helpful, great. Don't bother subscribing or any of that crap, because this is a throwaway account. Again, I'm not making this to get views or whatever. I don't want to be a YouTuber. I'd prefer never to be a YouTuber. But if you found this helpful, fantastic. If you have other questions, again, I've got a pretty decent round count on it and a shit ton of time dry firing it and training and practicing and all of that. So you can send me an email. It'll be in the description, or leave a comment, whatever, and I'll get back to you on that. And that, thanks for watching.